First of all, I want to apologize because yesterday I made a mistake who was mentioned to me by Elise Vendôme, who is there. It's about this language. So I gave a wrong infinite automaton to recognize it, and the right one is this one. So if there is no if n is 0, it means that you have the empty word, and of course you have as many A's as B's, so it's okay. Now, AB is in the language, okay, and then B is in the language, and then of course and so on. So this is the correct infinite automaton recognizes this set. I'm very sorry because it was my key example and the key was not functioning properly. Okay, so it was for yesterday. Okay, for today, I will speak about something which is, of course, absolutely not new to you because a lot of previous talks have mentioned these things. So we take a real number as a base, and by the greedy algorithm of Rényi, we know that every x can be written so we obtain that x is xi beta minus I, and the xi, they are in 0. Okay, so this was mentioned several times, so I don't come back to it. I have included 1 here because d beta of 1, since 1 is the upper bound of the interval, d beta of 1 is very important. Let's call it T1, T2, blah, blah, blah. And what we are considering now is 2 sets. First, the set d beta, which is the set of beta admissible expansions of elements of 0, 1 open. So by beta admissible, I mean that it is obtained through the greedy algorithm of Rényi, and we call the beta shift is the closure of d beta. Okay, so this is a subset of A to the n, and so we take the closure, and S beta with the shift is a symbolic dynamical system, which means that it's closed and is shift invariant. And the fact that it is shift invariant, Fabien recalled the definition previously. Shift invariant, it's obvious because, of course, it comes from here. If you have something which is admissible, the shifted sequence is also admissible. This is very easy. I am interested now in the property of the shift. So the first thing we can show is that the beta shift is okay. Now, so S beta is of course a subset of A to the n. Now I am considering the language of the beta shift. And what it is the set of finite words that appear in S beta, or the set of factors, finite factors of S beta. So now I can say that L of S beta, in general, beta is just a real number larger than 1. So in general, S beta is recognized by the following infinite sorry. I should have mentioned before this proposition. Okay, I put it here. The theorem of Paris, which is the following. A sequence, let's say Sn of is the beta expansion of some x in the open interval if and only if for every k sk plus 1 blah 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 is less in the lexicographic order than something which is, we'll define it in a minute, which is the quasi-greedy expansion of 1. Okay, so what says the theorem of Paris? It says that a sequence of integers is a beta expansion of some x here, if and only if for every k, the shifted sequence is between these two bounds for the lexicographic order. And what is d beta star of 1? Okay. Here we have d beta of 1, which is obtained through the greedy algorithm. And the quasi-greedy algorithm, there are several ways of defining it. I'm sure that Shigeki Akiyama gave already a definition. D beta star of 1 is equal to T1, Tm minus 1, Tm minus 1 omega if d beta star is Tm. We don't write the zeros if there are infinitely many zeros. And we say that it is a finite expansion. And otherwise is equal to otherwise. So this is called the quasi-greedy expansion by several authors. Okay. So it's if beta is equal to 10, this is 99999. That's all. Okay? So what the theorem of Paris says is this thing, is that take a sequence of integers, then this sequence is the beta expansion of something, if and only if it's bounded. And second item is that S belongs to the beta shift, if and only if the same equation here, but at the right hand side you can have equality. And it's obvious because this is the closure, so it's okay. So now with this theorem of Paris, I can build an infinite automaton which recognizes the finite factors occurring in the beta shift, and it's very easy. Let's write d beta as T1 star, T2 star blah 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 just for convenience. So I'm doing that. I'm reading T1 star, T2 star, and so on. And then when I'm here, here I can read any letter which is less than T1. Why? Because of this property on the lexicographic order. So here I can read anything between 0 and T1 star minus 1. A star here has nothing to do with the star notation I introduced yesterday. I'm sorry about that. Okay, now I am here, I have read T1 star, and I have to be now under T2 star. So I can come back here with 0 T2 star minus 1. And then, or I take this one. Here, the same, 0 T3 star minus 1, and so on like that. Okay, so this is a denumerable automaton because the set of state, of course, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on, and it's the fact that it recognizes what we want. It's only the transcription of the theorem of Parry, which is here. An important corollary of the theorem of Parry is that a sequence S is the beta expansion of 1 if and only if for every k 2 sk plus 1 blah 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 is less than for the lexicographic order. This is a direct consequence, but it's very useful in practice to recognize if something is the beta expansion of 1 or not. Okay. Now some examples. If take phi the golden ratio, so it's well known that the phi expansion of 1 is 1, 1, and then infinitely many zeros, so it's finite. So this is 1, 0 to the omega. So it's a finite expansion, and as Jean-Louis said, it's an example of a Parry number, simple Parry number. So phi is a simple Parry number. Okay, another example. Let's see. This one, which is the square of the previous one, so we have that the expansion of 1 is 2, 1 to the omega. So it means that this is eventually periodic. So tau is a Parry number which is not simple. Okay. So what about the automaton recognizing the beta shift in those two cases? In this one, if you apply the construction I've given there, you will obtain something which can be drastically reduced to this one. Oops, sorry. So this is the automaton recognizing the shift. Why? Because if you apply the construction given there, you have 1, here you have 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, and then you minimize the automaton, and you realize that it's in fact a finite automaton, because only 2 states are necessary. Here the same construction, the quasi-greedy expansion is equal to the greedy expansion, and it's 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So the automaton here if we read the 2, and then here you can read 0 and 1. 0 and 1, it's less than 2, so you can do it many times as you want. And then here you can read a 1 and then a 0. So it's also a finite automaton, the same construction here, and you can reduce it to that. The terminal states, I haven't put. Every state is terminal because, as I said yesterday, the languages which are recognized here are closed. So every state can be acceptant, as Fabien said, the same. Okay, is there any visible difference between these two automata? This is an example of a simple Paris number. This is an example of a Paris number which is not simple. Is it visible on the automata? The answer is yes. This automaton here, it is so-called the local this one, and I will explain in a minute what it means. It's a non-local automaton. And what is a local automaton? In just roughly speaking, it's an automaton, a finite, and there is some word which has the following property. When you read that word, you recover always the same state. It means that you never get lost. So you are somewhere lost in a city, and somebody tell you, okay, go this direction, and wherever you are going to the same state. So here, it's particularly simple. So this is called a synchronizing word. For people doing automata theory, and here it's 1. Whenever you read a 1, you arrive here. You see? So I'm everywhere in the graph, and if I read a 1, I arrive in this state. So I'm never get lost. But here, it's not like that. Why? Because if you read 1, either you arrive here or there. And so it's a very, okay, so you might think it's too simple. Of course, it's just an explanation. It's not the definition. Since here my automata are strongly connected, there is another way of telling it. It means that every infinite path which labels a loop labels only one loop. So for instance, here you have two loops labeled by 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. This one and this one. So it cannot be local. And here, every infinite loop is unique. 0, 0, 0 is this one, and 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. Okay, so it's not the definition, but it's a consequence of the definition. And it's very important because local automaton, they have very important property for coding applications and things like that. People from symbolic dynamics, they call this synchronizing word like 1 here, they call that a magic word. So it's the same thing. Okay, so now, okay, these are nice examples. When is it a general case? So the answer is in the following. or maybe I will the following. Okay, so now with definitions, symbolic dynamical system S is sophic if the set of finite factors of S is recognizable by a finite automaton. And S is of finite type if and only if L of S is is defined by the interdiction of a finite set of words. There are several definitions, but they are all equivalent. So, for instance, in the Fibonacci, in the golden mean case for phi, S of phi is defined by the interdiction of 1, 1. So here, in this automaton, you cannot read 1, 1. For tau, S of tau is defined by the interdiction of the set 2 of this set, which is not finite. So you can check it. Whenever you see a 2, it's okay. You can read as many 1s as you want, but after that, you're obliged to have a 0. Okay, so this is a system of finite type, and this is a sophic system, which is not of finite type. So the result is the 1. So the beta shift is sophic if and only if is eventually periodic and the beta shift is of finite type if and only if is purely periodic, which is the same as d beta star of 1 is finite. The result is due basically to Ito and Takahashi for this part and Anne-Bertrand Matisse for this part here. Okay, so you can, of course, I haven't mentioned, but system of finite type are all sophic, which is easy to realize. And why this result is true? Once again, it's due to the theorem of Paré. It's because the set of admissible beta expansions, they are between two sequences. On the left, it's 0. Okay, no big deal. But on the right, everything is controlled by the lexicographic order and by the structure of the sequence d beta star of 1. So in fact, the general comes from a much more general result, which is, in fact, in my notes, you can find it. It depends only on the property of the lexicographic order. It has nothing to do with the base in reality. Okay, so now I want also to mention, but I think that Jean-Louis already mentioned it, theorem of Schmidt Klaus Schmidt takes some x as an eventually periodic beta expansion if and only if sorry. Let's take beta Piso number, then if and only if, okay. So the result is the following. Beta is a Piso number, then something is in the rational field of beta if and only if its expansion is eventually periodic. So as a consequence, of course, from this theorem, I don't know where it is now, here, of course, is beta is Piso, then the beta shift is Sophic or of finite type, of course, which was already maybe mentioned earlier the previous week or something like that. Okay, so here you see that Piso number already appear as having a nice property so far as finite automata are concerned. So now I will explain you more interesting property of Piso numbers. But before coming to Piso numbers, I want to do a general construction. So we have our base, beta. And now I fix some alphabet of positive or negative digits, where d is an integer and larger than. First, I suppose that beta is not an integer. If it is an integer, everything still works, but it's not really interesting because we know already that everything is doable by finite state automata in integer base. So here, just to simplify the notation, I suppose that it's not an integer. So the canonical alphabet is normally this one, and it is, of course, it's the same here. Well, now I'm interested in the following set. So D is anything large enough. I am interested in this set of, let's call it Z. It's a set of sequences such that the value of is equal to 0. So I'm just interested in that. I want to consider the set of sequences. Here the alphabet contains also negative digits, so of course it's possible to have something being equal to 0. And I wonder when is it the case that this set is recognizable by a finite automaton. Because afterwards we will be able to derive a lot of interesting constructions. So I'm considering an automaton for the moment infinite, where the set of states is the polynomial in beta intersected with the following d is the largest allowed digit, so d, the value of this is d over beta minus 1, and this is a symmetric set. So the set of states is this one, and the edges are defined this way. I have an edge from P to state Q labeled by E, if and only if I take the value of the state P, P is inside that. So it's a polynomial in beta. So I multiply by beta, which means that I am working in my graph. Then I read this label E. Okay, sorry. E is in D, of course. Okay, and I arrive in state Q. This is very simple. It's the way you walk and you read the state where you are sitting on. You multiply by the base, and then you add the letter you're reading. You arrive in a new state, like that. So this is my automaton. So of course it's infinite. So let's give it a name. So this automaton, let's call it So it's not a big deal to realize, okay, so the initial state is 0 and every state is terminal. So this is a Bussy automaton where each state is terminal. Okay? So the situation is a bit like this construction above, except that here you are checking some value which should be equal to 0. But the fact that it accepts every word being equal to 0 is just due to the construction. And so why is it the case? So the first proposition is the following. If, okay. Is a infinite Bussy automaton that accepts the set which is included into to the n. Okay, it's not difficult to see that, and the convergence is due to the fact that beta is larger than 1, so we have no problem. So this is proposition 1. Proposition 2, which is more interesting. If beta is P0, then for every D, the automaton above is finite, which is really the interesting thing in that construction. So let's look at an example. Okay, so I'm going to make the construction which is there. So I'm starting in the initial state 0. I take -1, 0, 1. So D is 1 in my example. Okay, so what I'm going to do, if I read the letter 0, I'm staying here because 0 times beta plus 0 is 0. Okay. Now, if I read a 1, 1 times beta, which is phi here. It's phi. No, sorry. 0 times phi is 0, plus 1, it's 1. So I'm going into state 1. Okay? And if I read minus 1, it's symmetric, I'm going into that state. Is it the case that it is really a state? I should verify that 1 is less than 1 over beta minus 1, which is the case. So I'm happy. Now I'm continuing like that. I'm in state 1. Suppose I read a 0. What should I do? So 1 times beta, it's phi, plus 0, it's phi. And is it the case that phi is less than 1 over phi minus 1 or equal? Yes, because phi is the golden mean. So I'm going into that state. If I read minus 1, so minus 1, what it is? It's 1 phi minus 1, which is phi minus 1, and phi minus 1, it's less than the bound above, so I'm going here. And what happens if I want to read a 1? Phi plus 1 is, of course, larger than 1. So this is not allowed. I'm not, so when I'm sitting here, I'm not able to read a 1. Okay, now I go on with this state here, so maybe I'll go quicker. If I read a 0, I'm going here, and that's all. And here, if I read minus 1, I stay here forever, and it is symmetric, so it's easy to complement the automaton. So this is 1. I'm going into state minus phi plus 1. Then 0, 0 minus phi. Oops, excuse me. 1. And it's over, because all the other possibilities are forbidden. Now every state is accepting. And I'm considering only infinite paths, of course. So, for instance, you can verify that, for instance, if I start with minus 1, and then I do 0, and then 1, 1, 1, 1 forever, this is 0. In base, the golden mean, it's not difficult to see it. Here, minus 1, followed by 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, blah, 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 is also 0, and things like that. Okay, so, and here you see that obviously the automaton is finite because you have everything here. Okay, then the more general case, the proof, how does it work? It's just due to the fact that the states which are here, these are polynomials in beta, restricted to some bounded interval. And if beta is Piso, we can show that there is no, there is, we can, beta is necessarily bounded in the, no, sorry. I phrase it again. To any state, you can associate a norm, which is, okay, the norm is the following. Norm of polynomial in beta will be the maximum of beta I, where beta I are the conjugates of beta. And of course, after that, you use the fact that beta is piezo, which means that the other conjugate that beta has less than 1 in modulus. And so all these elements are bounded in norm. So it will give you the consequence, that is to say that the set of states is finite. Okay, so it's just a general idea of the proof. Now, and this is true for every D. And now we have a kind of reverse, which says that if the automaton is finite for every D, then beta is piezo. This is a result by Daniel Behrend and myself. So it means that there is something very strong about this property of being a finite automaton. First, it's trivial to see that beta must be an algebraic integer, and then using some complex analysis, we will be able to prove this result. And in fact, it can be ameliorated the following: if the automaton beta D is finite for D equals beta plus 1, then the beta is piezo. So this result was obtained by Jacques Sakharovich and myself some years later using techniques of finite automata, but I don't want to come into it. But it says that in fact you can reduce the test and obtain that something in piezo only for this alphabet. So now what happens for the value integer part of beta itself, and then it's an open question. So I put it here, the open. The automaton finite okay, so that I don't know how to do it. Just to give you some idea why it should be true, take for beta the root of x4 minus 2x cubed minus 2x2 minus 2. So the beta expansion of 1. So beta is a simple Paris number, not piezo, because there exists some conjugate alpha, which is roughly minus 1.13, something like that. And you can show by hand that, okay, so here integer part of beta is 2, and it's possible to show that the automaton beta 2 is not finite. So it's a reason why I think that this conjecture should be true, which would be very nice, but I was not able to prove it. So, okay. Okay, so that was for the set of Z beta D of elements being equal to 0. So why is it interesting? Because it will give some auxiliary, not auxiliary, some consequences interesting. So suppose, so consequence, suppose that Z beta d is finite, or even not finite, of course. From that, we derive a transducer making the conversion between alphabets. Alphabets C, for instance, and A, where A is the canonical alphabet. And how that you do that? Can you use this construction each time? Okay, so you first say that let D maximum of C minus A for C in C, A in A. So you consider the set of absolute values of the differences, digit differences between C and A. Now you say, okay, I take the maximum and I embed everything into D, capital D. And from the construction I've given to you, for the set 0 of the zero automaton, what can I do now? So you consider, and if you have something like P, E, Q, then you define a transducer, so let's call it T transducer, P, Q, and then you have C gives A for each C in C, A in A, such that the difference C minus A is E. Why not? Huh? So you're starting with this graph. You keep the same graph, but each time you have a letter E, E is in D, you replace this letter by the set of pairs CA such that the difference is equal to E. Of course, there are several of them, but the finite states. And of course, if Z is finite, T is finite as well, because it's the same graph. But what is the interest of T is that T recognizes the following set, the set of X, Y, such that sum of xn beta minus 1 is equal to the sum of. So this transducer makes the conversion between representation in base beta over C into representations of the same number in base beta on the alphabet A. Okay, so it's a digit set conversion. Okay, so now if we can use the fact that if beta is piezo, then the set of admissible expansion is recognizable by a finite state automaton. So in that case, the automaton is finite, so we obtain the following result. Then the normalization in base beta, which transform some representation on an alphabet C of a number into a number x, yeah, into the admissible expansion of x is doable by a finite transducer. This means that there exists a function which is computable by a finite transducer, which allows to transform any, this is for any C, in fact any alphabet C, which transform any representation into the admissible one. And this is the case when beta is piezo. And the consequence of this result, a corollary, is that addition in piezo base is doable by a finite transducer. Which was already well known when the case where beta was an integer. So I don't want to go back to the integer case, but okay, it was well known since Eilenberg at least that it was easy to find a finite transducer doing addition in base 2, for instance, and now it is generalized to any piezo base. So you see this piezo property, it's very, very linked to the fact that you can construct finite state automata. Okay. Okay. So this construction, taking the automaton recognizing things having value 0, that we call the zero automaton. So starting from the zero automaton and then making the construction which is underneath now. This is always doable, but the number of states is finite when beta is piezo. And there are similar properties in different numeration systems that I won't talk about today. For instance, in the canonical numeration system, which have been investigated by many people, we have also this property of zero automaton, which is finite, thus addition is doable by a finite transducer and things like that. Of course, there are no piezo numbers in that theory. Okay, now so in the remaining time, I want to speak about some slightly different numeration systems. So far we had a base, beta. Now we are not considering a base, but a sequence of integer as a basis. So let's this is the sequence of Fibonacci numbers starting with 1. This is important if you don't want to have some little problems at the beginning. So it's well known since the Zeckendorf, I don't remember the time of the paper, but anyway, that every natural element, oops, as a Fibonacci representation with digits in 0, 1, and it works with a greedy algorithm, so it works as follows: 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on. Let's take n is equal to, say something like 11, for instance. So how does it work? 11 is between 13 and 8. So I divide 11 by 8. It's 1, and the remaining is 3. So here, of course, it's 0 and 1. Okay, so the Fibonacci representation of 11 is this one. And this greedy algorithm has been generalized by Frankel to any with u0 equal 1. So un is in n and strictly increasing. So Fibonacci sequence is an example. So it's the same. And what Frankel showed is that every natural integer has a greedy representation, and the digits are less that are bounded by the quantity un plus 1 over un. Okay, so, but in general, okay, so now I want to show you a following proposition. Let u as a here denote by L of u is the set of u expansions of elements of n. By the way, here what is the set? So let's call it f. What is L of f? But since this is Fibonaccian, the set is everything which starts with a 1, and then so it's 1, 0, 1 minus in other words, is the set of words on the alphabet 0, 1 that starts with a 1 and doesn't contain 1, 1. Why? Because it's greedy. So if I had a 1, for instance, here, instead of having 3, I could have 1, 1 here, because it's Fibonaccian, so fn is equal to f minus 1 plus f minus 2. So you have that 1, 0, 0 is equal to 0, 1, 1. But this is not greedy, because when it is greedy, you take the greatest one each time. Although I haven't written the algorithm, but okay. So in that case, you see that it is exactly the same constraint as in Bayes' the golden mean. This is forbidden. And there is a reason for that I hope I will be able to explain to you. So my proposition says the following. Then if L of u is recognizable by a finite automaton, then u is a linear recurrent sequence. This result is due to Shalit. There are a lot of proofs. Just want to show you a very elegant proof. So suppose that L of U is recognizable, is say rational, the same. Then it's generating theory psi L of U of x, which is equal to the sum Ln 0, where Ln is the cardinality. Okay, so Ln is the number of words of length n which are in L of U. So by the theorem of Chomsky-Miller, I give you yesterday, this is a rational function. Okay? Now, what else? So Ln is the number of admissible words in length n. So L0 plus L1 plus L2 plus Ln is equal to Un. Why? This is important. Why? Because you have your system U1, U2, U3, and so on. This is U0. Now, for instance, take the word of length 1. You have some letter like that until U1 minus 1. Why? Because U1, its greedy representation is 1, 0, because it is greedy. Now you go on like that. So consider the word of length 2, and you go until U2 minus 1, because U2 is 1, 0, 0. Here I'm using the radix order. So you see that U2, for instance, is what? Is the number of words of length 0, there is only one in fact, then plus the number of length 1, length 2, and so on. So this is due to the fact, again, that the algorithm is greedy. Then, now you consider generating series of U, which is this one. So you replace Un by this quantity, and you obtain that this is equal to psi of L of U of x over 1 minus x, and this is still a rational function. Because this one is rational, this one is rational. And as I told you yesterday, if it is a rational function, then the set U, which is here, is a linear recurrent sequence. So this is a very simple proof, not at all combinatorial, but algebraic, of this nice result. Okay, so now just to end something about this numeration system, they are a bit more complicated than the real base. But I want now to mention the work of Hollander. So I don't remember the year. Yeah. So he first proved the following. If L of u, no, suppose that u suppose that un plus 1 over un converges to a limit beta when n goes to infinity. So we suppose that in that case we say that u satisfies the dominant root condition. So of course, if here you have the Fibonacci numbers, here you obtain the golden mean. Okay, so now we suppose that. And what Hollander proved is the following. Let u satisfies that and suppose that u L of u is recognizable by a finite automaton. So you suppose these two conditions. First, that this limit exists. Second, that the language is recognizable by a finite automaton. So we know that u is linear recurrent. So what proved Michael Hollander is the following. Then beta is a Parry number. Okay, so it's not at all, although it's a natural result, it's not at all obvious to prove that. So it means that there is a strong relation between the dominant root of the sequence u and the Parry numbers here. So I had no time to get into the details of the proof. It's almost entirely written in my notes. Now, in connection with the talks by Jean-Louis, suppose that beta is Parry, and I call g beta of x the polynomial associated to d beta of 1. So I think if d beta of 1 is T1 Tm finite, g beta is xm minus T1 xm minus 1 minus Tm, and if d beta of 1 is T1 Tm Tm plus 1 Tm plus p omega, where m and p are minimal, this is important. So we take the minimal indices m and p such that g beta of x is, g is for greedy, is x m plus p minus, okay, the sum of ti x m plus p minus I from 1 to m plus p minus x m plus sum ti x m minus I. Okay, so this polynomial g beta, they are called canonical polynomial, beta polynomial associated with beta. Okay, so they were already introduced by Jean-Louis. So now you know that they are not necessarily the minimal polynomial of beta, not at all. And now I need more general definition, extended. So these are canonical beta polynomial. Now I want to give an extended beta polynomial. It's a bit complicated to write it formally, so I don't do it. But you obtain that by considering expansion of that form T1, Tm minus 1, Tm minus 1, to the k T1 Tm, or T1 Tm minus 1 Tm minus 1 T1 to the omega, or any combination like that of expansion of 1 when d beta of 1 is T1 Tm. I will give an example in a minute. And in the other case, you will consider considering m and p not minimal when d beta of 1 is T1 Tm Tm plus 1 Tm plus p omega. Okay, so what do I mean? In the case where d beta of 1 is finite, you have a lot of expansions of 1. You have this one, you have things like that. And so all that are equal to 1. So it gives you a family of polynomials that Hollander called extended beta polynomial. And in that case, you consider the case where m and p are not chosen minimal. So you have also a family of polynomials. So for instance, in the case of the golden mean, do I have something here? Yes. For instance, for phi, so we have d is 1, 1. So the canonical beta polynomial is x term minus x minus 1. But for instance, you have x4 minus x cubed minus x minus 1, which is, so this is, which is equal to, okay, this product. So this is the canonical beta polynomial, which is in fact here the minimal polynomial. And now we take this one, so it's equal to 1 plus x squared times g phi, and it corresponds to the expansion 1, 0, 1, 1. So this is an improper representation of 1, but it is equal to 1 also. So this is this kind of polynomials. Okay, so now with these ingredients, Hollander shown the following polynomial, the theorem. U be a linearly recurrent sequence satisfying the root condition, dominant such that, like that, then, and suppose that beta is a Parry number, then if d beta of 1 is infinite, eventually periodic, then L of u is recognizable by a finite automaton if and only if U satisfies an extended beta polynomial. This is the first part of the result, and the second part says the following. If d beta of 1 is finite of length m, then 2, 1. If U satisfies an extended beta polynomial, then L of u is recognizable by a finite automaton. And the second part says that if L of u is recognizable by a finite automaton, then U satisfies either an extended beta polynomial h sub beta of x, or a polynomial of the form xm minus 1 x beta of x. And this is the end of the result. This is a very interesting result because it looks a bit technical with this extended beta polynomial, but at the same time, the situation is much more complicated than in the case of the real base. And I will show you in an example that, in fact, the situation depends on the initial condition of the recurrence. Okay, so you see that the important role is played by the Parry number, but it's not enough. So, examples now. Take un for un minus 1 minus 3 un minus 2. Okay, so the polynomial is, I haven't given, think okay, so you have the characteristic polynomial of U is this one. So there is a dominant root. So beta is 3. So it's a nice Paris number. And now take U0 equal 1, U1 equal 2. Then you have some collapse, and you obtain that UN is equal to 3 to the n plus 1 over 2. So these two expressions are the same. And you can show that L of U is not recognizable by a finite automaton. This is due to Hollander. And now, if you take a different condition, you take U1 is 4, then you obtain that UN is 3, no, yes, oops, plus 1, you have another collapse, and L of U is recognizable by a finite automaton. So you see that here this is almost base 3. So everything behaves nicely, and you are able to construct the finite automaton. I don't do it, but it's possible. But here it's completely different, and by some combinatorial but easy argument, you can show that it's not possible that the set of expansions be recognizable by a finite automaton. So, okay, maybe in another interesting example to show you that sometimes it's complicated. Okay, so another example. So this is, of course, Paris. Okay. So take now the sequence is 1, 3, 8, which is the Fibonacci numbers 1 over 2. So the minimal polynomial, the characteristic polynomial of this sequence, so the characteristic polynomial is x squared minus 3x plus 1. Okay, and the set L of U tau is exactly the same set that in base the golden mean. No, the square of the golden mean. So it's this one, 0, 1, 2, 1, 0. So this system were also introduced by Anne Bertrand. She did a lot of work on the canonical numeration system associated with some real base. So here it's the case. And you see that this is U0, this is UN. Now, you take different initial condition. U0 is 1, but U1 now is... no, sorry. Now you do something like that. You consider R, the 1, 2, 16, 17, 46, blah, blah, blah. The characteristic polynomial of R is the following. x minus 1, this one. So R satisfies the dominant root condition because R plus 1 over R n has this limit. But here the characteristic polynomial is a multiple of this one, and you can show by using the result of Hollander, which I have erased, that L of R is not recognizable by a finite automaton. So, and I will end it here. So here you have two different classes of examples. In the first one, you take initial condition which varies slightly. Here it's 2, it's not recognizable by finite automaton, and if you take 4, it is recognizable by finite automaton. In that case, it's something different. This is, say, the classical sequence associated with this number. Everything nice here. This is the toe shift, in fact. And now you take something slightly different, which satisfies this polynomial times x minus 1. There is a dominant root, which is the same, but here it's not recognizable by a finite automaton. So just to end about that, just to say that the case of representation of integer in some basis, it's not so easy than the case of the real Bayes representation. Okay, so of course there are many other and interesting numeration system linked with finite automata, but everything is in the notes, so you're welcome also to send me email if you want more.